What would you do if a landlord stole your deposit and physically threatened you? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. I'm a dry liner by trade, which is a plastering specialist who puts up the interior walls in buildings. It means I do a lot of moving around, as my work is usually needed toward the end of most projects. Because of this, I spend a lot of time in short-term rentals, usually for about 6 months at a time. Over the years, I've dealt with my fair share of landlords, both good and bad. Normally, with the bad ones, I'd just cut my losses, walk away from the deposit, and make a mental note never to use them again. But this one particular landlord, this one got under my skin so badly that walking away simply wasn't an option. I'd landed a big job in London, working on the new Wembley Stadium. Knowing I'd be there for a while, I decided to rent a house instead of a flat. I found a reasonably priced place in a local paper, advertised by a private landlord. I gave the man, let's call him Mr. Finch, a call and met him later that day. He seemed decent enough. I viewed the house, paid him the cash deposit, and moved in that weekend. For nearly a year, everything was smooth. I stayed in the house with no issues, always paid the rent on time directly into his bank account, and even fixed any small problems myself to avoid bothering him. In that whole time, I only spoke to him twice, once to arrange the rental, and a second time when the boiler failed, which he had an engineer fix the very next day. When the Wembley job was wrapping up, I went to the pawnshop that Mr. Finch owned to give him my month's notice. I told him I was happy for him to inspect the house before I left, to make the deposit return quick and easy. He never showed up for an inspection, so I just assumed he'd let himself in while I was at work, as I'd told him that was fine. On moving day, I drove to his shop, handed him the keys, and asked for my deposit back. His response was a cold, dismissive, "What deposit?" "The month's rent I gave you up front," I replied, keeping my cool. "The security deposit." He claimed he was keeping it to cover damages. "What damages?" I asked, genuinely confused. I had done bits of decorating and repairs myself. The house was in a better state than when I moved in. This was Finch's fatal mistake. He saw an average-sized builder, but what he failed to see was the dormant discipline of a soldier. In that single, aggressive move, he hadn't just pushed a man, he'd flipped a switch. He stepped right into my personal space, his face inches from mine, and snarled, "You're not getting it back, so K off." He then gave me a hard shove that sent me stumbling back. Now, Mr. Finch was a big guy, a good 4 inches taller than me and obviously spent time at the gym. The smart move would have been to walk away, but before I was a builder, I was a soldier in the British Army, a member of the Royal Green Jackets. Our training was clear: when confronted with aggression, you meet it swiftly and with overwhelming force. Without a second thought, my body tensed, and I started to move forward, every fiber of my being ready to drop this man, quickly and painfully. But after that first step, an idea hit me like a bolt from the blue. I stopped. I examined the thought from a few angles. It was perfect. This reveals my greatest strength, forged not in a gym, but in the disciplined mind of a soldier, the ability to override instinct with strategy. The landlord's victory would have been a bruised ego. Mine was about to be a masterpiece of cold, calculated revenge. I looked at his smug face, said, "Okay, bye," and walked out of his shop. What Mr. Finch didn't know was that I'd had a spare backdoor key cut, which I kept in my van just in case. That evening, I let myself back into the house for one last night. The landlord was likely sleeping soundly, dreaming of the deposit he'd stolen. He was completely unaware that just a few miles away, his entire property was being undone, not with rage, but with the meticulous precision of a surgeon. All night, I carefully dismantled every piece of wood in that house. I took down the doors, prying the pins from the hinges. I removed every inch of skirting board and architrave. The banisters were unbolted and laid down. I even lifted the floorboards. I took apart all the kitchen units, screw by screw, and rolled up the carpets and wood flooring. I was extremely careful not to damage a single thing. For a moment, I considered mixing all the parts up to create a maddening puzzle, as one commenter on my story later suggested, but decided against it. Everything was left in neat, organized piles in each room. The next morning, as I was about to start the long drive to my next job in Scotland, I decided to rub a little more salt in the wound. I stopped at Mr. Finch's shop on my way out of London. I grabbed a spare hammer, a screwdriver, a bag of nails, and a box of wood screws from my van. Mr. Finch wasn't there, probably for the best. I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and said, "Tell your boss he'll be needing these." Then I walked out and started my drive north. I switched my phone off for the journey. Hours later, I stopped at a service station near Nottingham for a bite to eat. I switched my phone back on. It immediately blew up with a string of furious texts and several colorful voicemails that left me chuckling to myself. One text simply read, "Do you think you're king funny leaving me nails and screws?" I replied with a single word, "Yes." Later, people online pointed out that what he did was illegal, as UK landlords are required to place deposits in a protected scheme. But honestly, the satisfaction of knowing he walked into that perfectly deconstructed house was better than any legal victory. This story is a powerful reminder that intimidation and greed often backfire, and that the most effective revenge isn't about brute force, but about meticulous, intelligent payback. What do you think is the most creative way to deal with a bad landlord? Share your thoughts in the comments below.